Part 2 of the episode is up and ready. That's right, The Vanishing at the Cecil Hotel, Part 2 right now. Part 1, we reviewed episodes 1 and 2. This one, we wrap it up with episodes 3 and 4. As you will see, new characters, new evidence, new settings. All right now, we break it down, our thoughts, our impressions. Literally, you'll see our impressions. It happens right now. If you haven't listened to part 1 already, you can jump right into this one. You'll pick right up. If you listen to part 1, you are primed and ready for this final installment of it. Andrew is back. I am back. We put a roadmap to this mysterious case. Remember, this series is on Netflix right now, so you can watch it and get caught up if you haven't already. So, Part 2, The Vanishing at the Cecil Hotel, episodes 3 and 4, our reviews, myself and Andrew Ramirez, right now. All right, we are back. This is part 2 of the review of The Vanishing at the Cecil Hotel, the Netflix doc. With me again, Andrew Ramirez, curator of the Murder Mecca Instagram account. We did episodes 1 and 2 in part 1 of our series. We had a lot of thoughts. We had some good, some bad, some indifference. We're in the heart of it now, though. So let's do a quick summary of what we had in parts 1 and 2. We had a Canadian student visit Los Angeles, stay at a hotel that had a bit of a history, and disappeared. And as episode 2 ends, we find the dead body of the student. That's where episode 2 ends. We talked about how it went in all the different directions, how we learned about Skid Row. We learned about the construction of a hotel. So we went in a lot of directions. As episode 3 starts, episode 3 also, I should say, is entitled Down the Rabbit Hole. So now we're learning that people are very interested in the hotel itself. So my question to you is, are you interested at all to stay at the Cecil Hotel knowing all this information?
Okay, so the question is, knowing everything I know up to this point in the doc, would I want to stay at the hotel if it was still open?
Yes. Yeah, because the doc sort of touches on people learn about the case and they learn about this creepy hotel and they flock to the hotel.
Yes.
To stay at it, to do their own investigations. Would you be interested enough to stay at the Cecil Hotel?
No doubt in my mind, I would be the first one there to book a room.
You love that. You love that
gotta
stuff.
get in there. I gotta get in there. I got the Murder Mecca page. This is fodder for the audience. You know, I wouldn't. So for me, I've got a little bit of like an ethical dilemma because this whole documentary is just the kind of the other side of the true crime narrative, which focuses very little on facts and incredibly deep on conspiracy theories and alternative possibilities. And that's what kind of like makes it a little bit unpalatable for people who are outside of the true crime family, but also really drives like the core of true crime is like finding the truth about a case that everybody thought they had figured out, you know? So I would want to stay at the hotel, you know, because I'm interested in true crime. But after knowing every real fact about this case, I've got no concern that the true story is legit, you know? So I would want to stay there, but I wouldn't want to rattle off new theories about what could have happened. This is a cut and dry case, and I would be interested to just be there for the sake of being there. But I'm not trying to solve anything new here. There's more interesting cases out there than this one when it comes to like new theories that could have happened. This one's cut and dry in my head.
Episode 3 was my least favorite episode of the series. This is the one that goes in the most directions and gets off track the most. But ironically, it starts with the detective with this quote, which is probably the most succinct quote of the whole thing. The quote is, "How did she end up in the water tank on the roof of a hotel? Do we have a crime here?" Very succinct, very, very like poignant way to put it. And then we investigate from there with all the web sleuthers, all the people flocking to the hotel, which I've said is like my least favorite part of this whole case because we lose the nuts and bolts of it. However, I got to say all the web sleuthers footage inside of the hotel with their phones, with their cameras was excellent. The documentary didn't give us any real footage of the interior of the hotel, not like these guys had. We saw the inside of rooms. We saw the inside of the actual elevator. And then we see the roof. We see the actual roof with these guys' phone cameras. And then it's kind of cool watching them walk around. So as far as the web sleuthers and the people just flocking to the hotel, I thought they actually served the story a little bit by seeing the interior of the hotel.
You know, I'm going to actually walk back everything I said in that first answer because you're right.
Okay, we'll start over.
Let's just reset it. Yeah, you're right. Because if it was 2013, I'd be deep in it. You know, I was taking it more as like a knowing everything I know. Would I want to stay there? Like, no. But in 2013, when they just found the body in the tank, I'm totally there. Yeah, for sure. Mm-hmm. I'm going to be entertaining the cases about like why that door was held open. I'm going to be totally like investigating every maintenance worker there, you know, because there's a real good chance that the maintenance worker might have had something to do with it. You know, if you're in the moment and you're a true crime guy or girl or whatever, you're in it. You're totally in it. You know, it's a spooky hotel, spooky people stay there a lot of the time, you know. Mm-hmm. It's got its fair share of serial killers and murders and stuff. So I would be totally deep in it. I don't have any issue with the initial wave of interest in that case. I feel like it was put away pretty easily a few months later, but initially I'm giving it a thumbs up. I would definitely book a room there if I had some free time and, you know, an interest to like solve that case. You know, I'd be totally there for sure.
Interesting. Expedia. Yeah. There needs to be an Expedia true crime section. You go to Expedia, you get to stay in all the all the hotels and motels where crazy shit has happened.
Yeah. First, I would totally be there. Yeah.
First kind of topic that they dive into in episode 3 is the physical ability of the elevator. We ended with that elevator footage. We had all these questions of it. First elevator explanation is the revealing of the door hold button on the elevator. Our question last episode was, why is the door open? It doesn't close after a second or two like normal elevators. Something must be up. But that elevator had a door hold button that when pressed stays open for, one of the guys clocked it for 2 minutes. So number one, that answers a bunch. It's no more spirits. It's no more someone else is on the outside of the elevator pressing the button. The elevator has an elevator hold button, which I got to say, I have never seen an elevator hold button on an elevator before. So maybe it's creepy that it just has an elevator hold button.
It's a good point. That hold elevator button, don't you usually have to hold it the entire time?
That's the button I know of where you hold it with your finger.
That's true. Yeah, because that guy says I hit the button and it was a 2-minute hold on the elevator, you know? And you're right. I don't want to feed into conspiracies right now, but I've never seen a button like that on an elevator. It's not designed that way. Could you imagine if all you had to do was hit a button and the elevator would be held for 2 minutes? That would be chaos if people hit that button by accident. Yeah,
you know, it's weird that it has that button, but it does explain the door thing.
And I have a lot of experience with elevators because I did moving for a long time. So typically, every single elevator will have that door hold button, but it does require you to hold it to keep the door open. You know, if you want to lock the door, you can do it with the maintenance key. And then that's just a simple thing where you got to flip the switch and then the elevator will only move when you hold down the floor versus just press it, you know? Mm-hmm. So I will say from a perspective of someone who's had a lot of experience with lots of elevators, that is a rare button where you can just hit it once, not touch anything, and then the door stays open for 2 minutes. A little bit bizarre. I've never seen an elevator that does that.
Bizarre that it has it, but it does explain why the door doesn't close. Yeah. So we have a physical answer to that question. Then number two, we complained about this in the first part. Then it goes into the, other than the video footage of her in the elevator, they find video of her having a interaction with two men who bring her a package from the last bookstore. We never see the footage though. They don't show us that footage. There's no talking about it. Another big drop of the ball is like, we have an interaction. They say there's footage, but we don't see it. And then furthermore, we never talk to the two guys. We never have an interview with them. They don't say if they were reached for comment and they didn't want to comment. That would be pretty vital to see what her mental state was for that interaction. Glossed over it. Doesn't happen. Same with the two girls that stayed with her in the shared room and said she was leaving them notes saying to leave her alone, to get out. We don't get an interview with those two girls. We don't get to ask what her state of mind was. And my other gripe was those two. No follow-up on that.
Well, yeah, let me tell you, everything you're saying is absolutely right. And it just reflects on the documentary and not on the story. Because the story is super interesting still. To give you some details about all that stuff, okay, it's set up like this. We had nowhere to go with this case. This is the detective speaking. We had nowhere to go with this case. We were confused. And then we reviewed the tapes and found out that before her death, she had met with two males and picked up a package outside of the building. And then for 1 second, your true crime brain is showered with dopamine. You're like, oh, here we go. Like, this is our big moment. This is going to crack the case. And then you discover that all they did was deliver her some books from the last bookstore, Mm-hmm. So it's almost unnecessary detail other than to just rile you up a little bit. You find out that the box she received was in the room and it just contained books that were a little too heavy for her to carry from the last bookstore, Right. So you almost feel like you've been brought up only just to be let down in that moment, Additionally, you're a little annoyed with the police because you're like, so you hadn't even gone through all the footage yet? Like, you found that out a little bit later on that she met with two guys. Like, I feel like you guys should have just done a full survey on the footage. So that's a little bit of a bummer right there. I feel like, Mm-hmm. There's so many interesting things in the case that just immediately get dropped out of your mind, with the exception of some big details that they say for the very end. But yeah, it's almost a little disheartening. You got the two guys who meet her out front. Then, okay, this is one that occurred to me that almost, since this is called going down the rabbit hole, I kind of went down the rabbit hole a little bit with this episode too. And my mind started to wonder, who's bullshitting right now? And I'll tell you who my top suspect is, just to be involved in this conspiracy theory.
Top subject as of episode 3.
Yes, I find
Got it.
Amy Price to be a little guilty sounding to me. Because let me tell you something. Amy Price is the only one that says, so we have an issue. How did Elisa Lam get to the roof? And there's two options. She either went down the hallway, through the window, climbed up the ladder, or she went through the stairwell and opened a door that would have set off an alarm, and it's like one or the other, and Amy Price is convinced that Elisa took the ladder. Why? Because she says if she had opened that door, she would have set off an alarm that would have gone off at the front desk. That would have been impossible. Also, that would have been hotel negligence, bro. So it behooves Amy Price to push the ladder narrative, because if she didn't take the ladder, which is a fire escape and a legitimate mode of transportation that every single tenant should be able to do, if she didn't do that, that would have been hotel negligence. And I've been to rooftops of buildings before, and you can open those doors and nobody cares. Those alarms are never set, So I found Amy Price to be a little disingenuous in that moment with her certainty that that would have set off an alarm at the front desk. Those alarms never go off. People get high on rooftops as almost like a cliche, if those doors were setting off alarms, no one would be able to be stoned on a rooftop, you know? So I found that to be a little like, Amy Price, maybe you're not telling the whole story here because you're trying to cover your ass as a hotel manager. So I'm not saying she did it. I'm not saying she had anything to do with the murder, but I thought she was a little quick to denounce the stairwell theory because of an alarm that was supposed to work. You know what I mean?
I would call that one the Scooby-Doo theory, where whoever is in the first 2 minutes of the episode ends up being the killer by the end of it. Every Scooby-Doo episode has that. The person at the beginning will be the killer. Also, as you mentioned, as it comes up later, the wrongful death suit against the hotel is vital in how she got to the roof. And if it was through a faulty alarm that didn't go off, the hotel would be negligent. So she could have been coached up on that.
Yeah. And then let me push it a little further. Can you imagine Elisa Lam successfully climbing that ladder in the state she was in? You know, I guess you have to make the assumption that she's out of her mind, but like, it's a scary climb, dude. That ladder, if you miss one step, like you're going to plunge to your death, you know? And she's like kind of doing like the Conjuring dance outside of the elevator and stuff. I had a much easier time imagining her going up the stairs to the roof, you know? I couldn't really picture her doing the ladder, but then again, she technically does do the ladder to get on top of the water tank, you know?
Yeah.
But I had a much easier time thinking that she went through the door and there was no alarm because those alarms are never connected, you know?
Right.
Santiago doesn't want to have to go up the elevator, you know? Like he disconnected that thing the first day he was on the job because the wind probably pushes that thing open all the time, you know? So that wasn't a hard thing for me to denounce when Amy Price was like, no, that alarm always goes off. It's like, give me a break.
At this point too, we had established that the Cecil Hotel was not in tip-top shape. So it's not unconceivable that a couple alarms that should go off do not go off. Also too, it's really hard to apply logic to a psychotic state as well. Like we're trying to like, why would she go this way? Why would she go? If you're going to the roof, if you're commit suicide, wouldn't you? This chick was out of her mind. There's no logic to a psychotic state. So we sort of overthink it a lot, but it led us into the water tank questions that we have at this point in the episode. How did she get in the water tank? The hatch, of course, is a critical piece of details. And the fact that she's not clothed in the water tank are kind of water tank questions moving forward. And then after that, the doc spends a huge amount of time with the web sleuthers dispelling evidence, conspiracy theories, hotel cover-ups, and employees. A lot of time spent on that sort of portion of it. And then we have our first timeline break in episode 3. And this one takes us to 1991 about a journalist reporting on the red light district. And he stays at the Cecil Hotel and he essentially just gets a bunch of prostitutes. He just wants to get prostitutes. I'm not sure what exactly the point of this timeline break was other than crime happens at the hotel, which we already knew.
This is the biggest non sequitur.
It had nothing to do with the case at all.
Is like, and the way they set it up is like almost like it's like, oh, come on. Like they say in 1991, a journalist named Jack Unterwegener like came to LA to write an article about prostitution. And if you don't know this guy, you're like, oh, okay, this is like a Hunter S. Thompson type, you know, who's like gonna write a kind of sleazy article.
He just wanted prostitutes.
And then they say, so he visited the red light district and really started picking up tons of prostitutes and brought them all up to his room. And then they say, just kidding, he's not a journalist, he's a serial killer. And he was like run out of Austin. It's like, that is the quickest like little roller coaster narrative they give in the documentary. And it's like, why did you open with his journalist like angle? You know, it's like they're almost conveying the same story that he conveyed to his victims. It's like, you don't need to do this to me, especially in a documentary that has nothing to do with him, you know, like you can just tell me the truth about him. So I thought that was a total just filler intro to this guy who is one of dozens of people who were really sketchy and shady and did tons of illegal stuff, like who stayed there during that era, you know? It's almost uninteresting and kind of just doesn't serve the plot or the narrative other than to establish what's already been established, that it's a spooky hotel. You don't got to go beyond Richard Ramirez and a few suicides to get it across that this hotel's effed up. So the Jack like Unterwegener thing I thought was so stupid, except for one minor detail. This is the one thing that made me laugh out loud and like rescued the whole thing, is like, and it's almost like the documentary knows, like, we're losing the audience a little bit. Like, let's bring them back. And we got our main man, Kenneth Gibbons, who comes in and tells you what it was like to walk around downtown during that time, and drops the infamous line, "It was the host roll." He says, if you walk down a certain part of that fucking era, like, you could go down the host roll. And like, that moment is just like, okay, like, what are we doing here? Like, are we going to talk about how this is like a sad story with like Jack Unterwegener, or are we going to like make this like a joke where like Kenny's talking about like a host roll? Like, I felt a little like unanchored in that moment, where I was like, is this supposed to be funny? Is this supposed to be depressing? Like, I don't know what the tone is anymore. So I found that whole like down the rabbit hole like section like confusing, and like I was laughing a little bit, and then I was a little disgusted. Like, I didn't know the tone at all, man. I was a little confused.
Yeah, big left turn,
Yes.
taking us off track. This was the part of the doc where you get up and you go put something in the microwave, you go to the bathroom, and you just let it play. Like,
Yes.
I'll just come back to this later. Huge left turn, not necessary, but as we found out, this documentary loves left turns. It loves throwing extra confetti in the air and then watching it.
If you've ever watched like a late night infomercial or something, it's doing the same things. Like, it takes you to a moment and then like it walks you back 3 steps. This is very much keep them watching material. So
I think so. I think they knew they didn't have 4 episodes worth of content in this story and really had to pump it up.
Yeah, no, they only have about 45
They have one. They have one episode.
45 minutes worth of interesting stuff. And then they really don't pay any attention to the audience who's going to be watching this, who are people who already know how the story ends. I would imagine very few people who have seen this documentary don't have any prior knowledge when it comes to Elisa Lam. So if the documentary kind of handled it more in a, we already know that the true facts about this story, I feel like that would have been much more accommodating to a true crime audience, because this is almost like designed for like a grandma who doesn't even like these kinds of stories. It leads you through so many twists and turns that don't matter. So it's trying to do the hotel thing. It's trying to do the Elisa Lam like stalker thing. And I just found it kind of disappointing, like when it all wrapped up, about halfway through. I really didn't enjoy it. Yeah.
Well, the timeline comes back. When it comes back from this 1991 story, it comes back 2 days after the body is found. And then we have Jason Tovar, the medical examiner. He goes, we're back to nuts and bolts with him. We're going to find out evidence on the clothing, evidence of assault, time of death, etc. He finds out there's no internal or external injuries on the body. So then we still have mystery upon mystery. And you know what I always like about medical examiners and toxicology? It always takes weeks. It always takes a long time to get any results. I don't know if that's technology. I don't know if that's bureaucracy, but it just reminds me of the Simpsons episode where they find it what they think is an angel and they have to test it. And the medical examiner guy says, ooh, it's going to take weeks to find this out. And they give him a carton of cigarettes and he says, did I say weeks? Because I meant seconds. And he has the info right there. I always get that feeling. It's like, why is it taking you weeks to run this? No one ever explains that. And we're just left in the dark till the results come back.
Yeah, I'm not going to sit here with no medical degree and try and explain this one away and listen to all of that. But I would say that it seems like if you want to find out, you could,
Right.
It seems like, especially given the medical urgency of this one, it's all over the headlines. People are freaking out. It seems like that's the carton of cigarettes in this situation. It's like, just speed it up. Why couldn't you? But
or just lie to me. Just lie to me, medical examiner, and say no, we need to see chemical decay. That takes 72 hours. And just lie, make something up.
Well, but he doesn't even have to lie. He could likely tell the truth and explain why it took so long. But it doesn't address that question. He just says it's really unsatisfying. I think he says like these situations can't be rushed, so we didn't rush it. And it's like, what does that mean? Like, are you talking about the petri dish needs to sit for an X amount of time, or like we wanted to cool down the public? Like, he wasn't, he was almost talking to you like you were a 6-year-old. And it was like, tell me why it took so long. Just tell me. Yeah. So I found him annoying. Let me tell you the other thing I found annoying about Tovar, the coroner or whatever, is that he literally checked the wrong box on the form of death that said cause cannot be determined. And then he scratched it out and he put accidental. And it was like, if you pay any attention to the news and you pay any attention to what's happening with this case, you do a new form. All you do is you throw that one out and you're like, okay, now I'm going to do this one where I put 1X, you know? I can't believe he was so lazy that he had to just scratch it out and put another one. Like, it's one piece of paper, just write a new form. So I found all of it really unsatisfying. Maybe he doesn't watch the news or something. Maybe he had no idea. Honestly,
works with dead bodies.
It's fair. He could be a bit of a homebody, you know, and just be down in the basement and just doing his thing. And like, he made an error and he just scratched it out. But if you have any idea all of the theories that are formulating around this case and like pay attention to like local news in LA, like, you would ask him to make you another form and be like, can you just do me a favor and just redo this one so you don't have an X over the wrong one that you've scratched out and put a date by? Like, just do this for me. This is where the PR company comes in that every medical examiner should have, you know, where they take a look at the doc and they're like, this is all good, of course, but you need to redo this one part because this is going to create a shitstorm.
Yeah. If there ever was catnip for the conspiracy theorist, this was the fuel on the fire. A official form that has an error in it, that's mislabeled. This was the jet fuel.
Not only is it mislabeled, it's not even well written. He doesn't even write the 5 well. He makes it look like
we get the explanation,
8, or the 8 looks like a 5, and it's like, oh my god, like, give me a break. Have you never done this before? Like, or maybe he's never done a high profile autopsy. You know, it could have been his first one. But
could have been Tovar's first autopsy.
Tovar's very first autopsy. Yeah, he's breaking the seal on his little autopsy kit for the first time.
Also would just appreciate if you said, like, it takes weeks because, you know, we knock off at 4:30 on Fridays here. We got a 3-day weekend. So, you know, it's just going to take us a long time. I'll even take that. Just tell me that it's going to take a long time. I don't even care.
Yeah, I couldn't tell what he was trying to do. I didn't know what his angle was. It's not his fault. I'm sure he explained it, or maybe they didn't ask him. I don't know. But in this moment, like, I feel like you have to blame the documentary. It's not anyone's fault but the people who made this documentary, because they could have asked the question. It could have just been like, that's not enough. Like, why did it take so long? And maybe he said it and maybe they didn't choose to include it. There's a weird lack of science in this documentary that bugs me a lot.
There is a lot of that.
Like, it's so emotional and conjectured and just theoried, and there's no science. There's no satisfying science in this one. So it bums me out. It honestly bums me out. This is easily my least favorite episode for sure.
Yeah.
It's down the rabbit hole.
Well, this takes us, then we get to the rabbit hole. I wrote down a few conspiracy theories proposed. Which one was your favorite? We have, this crime was mirroring the Dark Water horror movie. The name spelled backwards has to do with a tuberculosis outbreak caused by the drug that Elisa Lam's name spells backwards. Evil Hotel, or as the episode ends, the death metal artist Morbid, who stays at the Cecil Hotel, killed Elisa Lam. What's your favorite conspiracy theory floated?
Well, okay, they're all good. They're obviously all good.
They're all outrageous. Yeah, no one is leaps and bounds better. That's what makes them great. They're all a stretch.
Let me tell you the one that like sparked my curiosity the most. And maybe they mentioned it later, but I'll bring this one up now. Well, okay, runner up is Dark Water. I love the whole life imitating art situation here, where like there's a real case that happens, and usually the movie is made out of this story, but in this case, it's the other way around. The movie already happened, and there's a good possibility or a theory that Elisa Lam was acting out this scene where a young girl in the movie, she's much younger. She seems like she's 12, but Elisa Lam was 21. But for the sake of the comparison, a woman in a red sweater, going into the water tank and then making the water all dirty. I thought that was really interesting. They do the whole like racist comparison where they were like, and it was a Chinese movie. So right. There's no doubt it's connected, like
open and like shut case.
LOL. The fact that there's a Chinese version of it sends it home for you is really funny on another like podcast. But yeah, I like that they did that, I appreciate that. But for me, the one that sent chills down my spine a little bit, and I didn't know this one, was the one where if you look up the last bookstore registrar.
Oh, right. The last bookstore's P.O. box or something.
It's the registrar address. You search it in a Google Map search, and all you got to do is put the zip code. It works. It pinpoint drops you to Burnaby, British Columbia, into the cemetery where Elisa Lam is buried.
Yeah,
like, that was
that.
That so weird. Random. It's like they use the word synchronicity a lot during this episode, where they're like, there's no way that all these things could have happened at the same time. In a courtroom, that's just called circumstantial evidence. That doesn't hold anything, but
right. Which, by the way, they spend 3 minutes explaining what synchronicity is also. So we get a lesson in just the definition of synchronicity also.
It's also circumstantial. Like all it is circumstantial evidence. So I can't believe that people who know this much about true crime don't know what circumstantial evidence is, but they've renamed it synchronicity, which, okay, go fuck yourself. But the thing that I did appreciate was the cemetery one, because that one taps into all of it. It taps into the supernatural feeling of a cemetery. It taps into a larger global internet conspiracy where like the search engine is promoting it, and then it just it taps into the coincidence value of like it being where she's from. It's like the bookstore is connected in this too. I loved that one. That was, if I'm picking my favorite one, it's definitely going to be that one for sure.
That's a good pick. I think that's the clear winner. That's the most broad, the most encompassing. With the conspiracy theorists, here's what I love conspiracy theorists do. When they have something wild they want to say, they'll say, some people theorize, and then they go on the rant. I was like, what people? No people. You're theorizing this. It's the bitchy chick who says, some people have told me. Like, no people have told you. This is your thought. It's right up there with the person who's offended at something and says, now, I enjoy a joke just as much as the next person, but this one went too far. It's the same person. It's the same person who wants to put their little 2 cents on everything.
These are really cheesy, like door-to-door salesman tactics here. Like what is this written in like a 1930s how to sell someone anything book? Like it's a classic case of social proof, So if you offer a social proof other than yourself, it's not just me. It's a lot of other people have been saying this too.
I didn't say it. Some people are saying it. A lot of people are saying
it's convincing. It's like, well,
it's a Trump move too. Trump puts this move in too. It's like a lot of people are talking about it. I don't say it.
If you want to overthink this one a little bit, this is kind of how Trump gets elected.
Totally.
This kind of bird-brained thinking about like, now that I've read 4 posts on Reddit, I think it's true. It has to be true. And then the truth of it becomes bigger and bigger the more that you don't verify it, because more people think like that. If you just introduce a small amount of evidence, it's not that interesting of a case. But at the time, this thing just caught total fire. And it's like, it's a perfect storm of incompetency, man. Like it's the perfect storm in the sense that the police are totally incompetent. The coroner can't fill out a form properly, and then you've got the guys not checking the water tank. You've got them writing down the wrong sequence of events. And then you've got these internet sleuths, it's not really their fault. They're not getting paid to do this, but they're hobbyists, and they're not thinking about this correctly. Like they're just in it for the armchair entertainment of it all, it seems like, and they want to go down every rabbit hole they can go down, and more power to them, like it's the police's job and the media's job to control this a little better, you know, and like there was no control over it, you know. I think this one got kind of taken by the internet. Like the guy said, the main detective said, it went viral. The video went viral. And then the next thing you know, they've got this death metal rocker named Morbid as like their top internet suspect, you know? So I can't really get behind any of the people in this case, but the people that I would blame the most are the people who are getting paid as part of their job to control this. You know, the sleuths are doing their thing, but the police and the media were the ones that bummed me out the most.
Yeah. Some people would say episode 3 was too long. I don't say that, but some people said episode 3 was too long.
The other one,
some people theorize
one
episode 3 was unnecessary.
Elisa Lam was likely butchered on the roof and thrown into the water tank. But who knows? That could just be a theory. Well, then don't say that kind of stuff, but who knows?
Episode 3 ends with the thought of this death metal guy, Morbid, who stays at the hotel and he makes these kind of creepy videos. Ends with him kind of floating the idea that he is a suspect. So their hook into episode 4 is, what's with this creepy guy who stayed at the same hotel? He could have killed her. That's what they used to hook us into episode 4. I was just glad episode 3 wrapped up eventually, but episode 4 is entitled The Hard Truth. Couldn't be a better title for it. And we get to actually interview Morbid. We couldn't get the 2 guys at the bookstore. We couldn't get the 2 girls that stayed with her, but we got Morbid, who's a death metal guy, lives in Mexico. He sits down for an interview with the people. So starting off, describe Morbid's look to people who haven't seen him before.
So Morbid's got a very, if you've ever seen the movie Sinister with Ethan Hawke, where he finds all the snuff films in the attic, Morbid is almost a carbon copy of that villain from that movie. I think his name is Bagol or something like that. Morbid's got to give you another example, if you like the band Slipknot, Morbid kind of looks like the drummer of Slipknot. He's got the white face, he's got the long black hair, very metal typical look. He's got the nails coming out of the wristband. He's got the long black trench coat. He's a big guy by all, maybe the angles give him a little height, but he looks like a big guy. And he seems like most metal people are, you know, maybe this is well known at this point, but it wasn't initially, is that most metalheads are softies at heart, you know,
right?
They're just expressing themselves and they're doing their thing in a not actually violent way, you know, which is almost beautiful. And if anyone's the least likely to be a serial murderer, it's this guy who spends more time painting his face white and like combing his hair and dedicated to his look,
putting on eyeliner.
I don't know why people can't see why that's one of the biggest reasons why he wouldn't be a serial killer, is because he's so dedicated to himself, you know, like he's interested, like he's doing something positive for himself. So I felt horrible for Morbid. I was so sad.
He ends up being a very sympathetic figure.
Pablo
Vergara is his real name. I just liked the way he pronounced the Cecil Hotel. He says like, "Hey everybody, I'm here in the Cecil Hotel in Los Angeles. I am here to make a scary music for my viewers. I like death and the darkness that is within me." And then I'm glad they do wrap this up quickly as they move on. Morbid stayed at the Cecil Hotel 1 year prior to this case. So this is open and shut. Somehow we still flew him in.
No, but it's not fair because they use him as the hook to get you to episode 4. So it's like, how dare
this is an easy
do this
fix.
To me? Yeah.
And then the poor guy goes through a mental breakdown because people online, one of them was called Jimmy Jam, JIMMY, says you killed her. And poor Morbid has a mental breakdown.
Hey, but let's not forget more. Okay. So I was thinking about this. I was trying to use different perspectives here, and I tried to really put myself in Morbid's boots. And the thing that I was a little intrigued by was that brief moment where Morbid tried to levy this into a marketable moment. and was like responding to the commenters with like a gas mask on and was
You're
like,
right.
I am not the one who killed Elisa
Right.
Lam.
like
Morbid's
he was
response
doing
did not
that.
help.
He was doing that for a little bit where like, I don't blame him either. Like I've worked with metal heads before from Mexico. Those guys love the death vibes, you know? So Morbid got accused of killing a girl in a haunted hotel. He was digging it for a little bit, I think. You know, he was engaging the audience,
Right.
you know, like he was writing songs about it a little bit. And then I think it hit a point where it Titanicked on him. And like he almost took on more water than he could hold, you know, and the whole ship just fell. He got overrun.
He ends up
by the
getting
negative comments.
hospitalized, as he
tried
says.
to kill himself. He
tried
says
to
he
kill
tried
himself. And
I mean, can
poor
you
guy.
imagine how many people were
Handle it.
saying like, I know where you live and I'm going to be there tonight and I'm
Right.
going to throw you in a water tank. Like, I bet he got thousands of messages that were truly scary and it broke him, you know, it would break anybody, you know, but especially a metalhead who had heart as a big old softie, like that's going to shipwreck you. So I felt really sad for Morbid, and I'm glad that they drew a little parallel between him and Elisa about like two people that were just kind of wronged by the internet a little bit, you know, really sad situation.
Poor Morbid. After that, we get to the actual autopsy. It takes a few weeks, no drugs, no alcohol in the system, low levels of her prescribed medication. So she wasn't taking her medication. Big piece of evidence there into what caused a psychotic break is she wasn't taking her medication, because we know she's bipolar and depressed at this point. Then here's the one I wanted to spend more time on. She attended an audience production of a TV show in Burbank on her trip. She writes a letter to the host of the TV show demanding to meet him. Security gets nervous. They escort her off the property. Wouldn't you think that would be a great piece for them to say what show she attended, maybe get some footage from the show of the audience cheering? And then, of course, this is also an example that she's having a mental break. They kind of glossed over that quick. And I thought that would have been something easy and fun and interesting for them to sort of dive into, show a few clips from that show.
Yes. Okay. So I think maybe this is where the documentary might run into a little bit of like, who wants to be associated with this story anymore? You know,
right.
It was likely a popular show that's still on the air, maybe. And
Ellen?
they're like,
what show do you think she went to? Let's guess what show she went to.
It's 2013. It could
Ellen's
have been
in
How I
Burbank.
Met Your Mother.
Oh, that's good.
An episode of How I Met Your Mother.
Young Shelton?
Anything. I suspect it was a very popular show that was like, please don't bring that up, that she was at our show. The other thing is that you're absolutely right. Typically when cops investigate missing persons, they retrace the person's steps 2 weeks leading up to the case, you know? So any competent cop, I feel like, would have immediately had like the connection to the show she went to. And then the fact that security escorted her off the premises because she had written a weird letter that she demanded be shown to the host. Security, at least competent ones, are supposed to keep logs. They should have had that logged, and a detective should have been able to read that within 24 hours of investigating the case and be like, okay, we're dealing with someone who's not in their right mind. You know, that doesn't mean that she still can't be taken advantage of. You know, we don't have to rule out the whole foul play part, but this adds such a new angle to this story where the moment I see a videotape where she's doing this in the camera, you know, I'm like, okay, I'm counterweighing this against the Burbank removal, where she was escorted off premises by a security guard because she wrote a creepy letter. Or maybe the letter wasn't creepy, but the fact that she demanded it be shown to the host gives you the vibe of she's not well. In addition to the fact that she was moved from a group room to a solo room because she was writing notes to people and leaving them on their beds saying, get out. And she wasn't opening the door because she demanded a password. All of this sounds like she's having a major psychotic breakdown, you know? So I don't know why the police, and again, this is an issue I have with the documentary, is that I don't know if the police are being edited poorly to try and make this an interesting narrative, or if they're just really bad cops. But this one seems so cut and dry. If you just gather everything on one kitchen table and look at it, you know, it solves itself almost. You know, she's having a mental breakdown. Let's search the building. really well. She's somewhere in this building,
Yeah.
So I can't believe they didn't do that. I can't believe
It's the
they failed at
logical
that.
path is the mental breakdown.
Yes.
Not the hotel is haunted, not her name spelled backwards is the drug for tuberculosis. It's the logical path to it. So the death is ruled an accidental death due to bipolar. And then the web sleuthers write, that doesn't make sense. And my question is, what are you basing that on? Why doesn't that make sense? So then we get to see all the web sleuthers. Okay. Who was your favorite web sleuther?
Maybe I'm getting his name wrong, but I think it's John Lorden.
Oh, was that the guy that visited the grave?
He's the one that says, I'm a YouTuber, and that's actually in the dictionary now. He says that, which I love. I love that he's that dedicated to his craft as a YouTuber.
Oh, he was the more heavier set guy.
He's a heavy set guy who's got kind of the spiked hair.
Yes. Okay. Yeah.
I love John Lorden because I thought that he was the least gratuitous of the sleuths. I thought he did a good job of pulling up the facts when he could. There's one part where he says he got a copy of the coroner's report. And I was like, that's my guy. Like, I love when the sleuths are getting evidence, and they're not just making conjectures based off of like how a grainy video looks. But John Lorden was actually going to public information, getting documents and examining them from there. So he was my guy. I enjoyed his take on everything much more than a lot of the other sleuths who were just like going with it, just kind of flowing with it.
Mine was my favorite one was the sassy English black chick who was basically just sitting on her bed, and she was like, "What's up, guys? There's no way this was due to bipolar. The police were I don't know if the police were covering it up." She was doing that. Wow. I feel spending a day with her would be exhausting. But then there was also the chick with glasses who I think somewhere along the line, chicks figured out if they wear glasses, that really messes with the male brain, because then all we do is say, what does she look like without her glasses? What if she puts her hair a different way? Remember that movie where the nerdy chick takes her glasses off and she's hot? I think they realize that glasses just makes our brain go nuts, and then they wear them and it drives every male crazy with questions. So I do give her extra points for her.
It's a big porn trope too, the whole glasses thing. Like, if you got glasses on in a porno, like, obviously that is not a coincidence, So yeah, I get it. There's also the true matter is that maybe she just needs glasses, who knows? But
no chick needs glasses.
I do agree with you. Like, the whole, like, it's the glasses is one piece of the puzzle for me, where it's like, it's for me, it's more the conviction of like, I know that there's something going on here, like, based off of my 30-minute Google search, I know that there's foul play, and it's like, stop promoting these kinds of people. These people,
right? The documentary gives them equal footing as the cops.
I'm not gonna. Okay, well, I will. This is bad. This is MAGA wearing bullshit right now, where these kinds of people, if you just raise them in a more Southern environment, they'd be voting Trump. These people don't think,
these are very people, malleable brains, I think.
These people
and we
are
can,
impressionable, so the fact that they're being broadcast in this major way to thousands of people, granted, I suspect that thousands of people find them to be really idiotic and like kind of sad. I think my take on them is very common, where if you watch that documentary and you're like slightly level-headed, you'd be like, these poor people, these people are just kind of interested in like, talking.
My question is to these people, like, are we out of problems? Do you have anything to do? Is there anything else you can spend your day with?
These people have existed before the dawn of time. The internet sleuth is just another way of saying like the blowhard in the village square. It's just
the town crier,
convinced that they know something that's not true. But thanks to the internet, and I don't knock the internet at all. The internet's beautiful, but it has provided a platform to this kind of nonsense too, which has turned into its own thing, So I wish the documentary didn't placate that as much. I wish that the documentary had them contained in their own little section, but also brought in the much more competent bloggers who didn't say all that bullshit either, because the Elisa Lam case was also covered by bloggers who were very sensible and very convinced within a month that there was nothing really bad going on,
Yeah.
So that was the hard part for me, was seeing the kind of unethical narration of the documentary that didn't highlight the right players in this story, I thought.
This brings us to the part of the documentary that I found indefensible. When the documentary paints the police, the hotel employees as criminal, they take some hard edits when the psycho web sleuthers say, was it a cover-up? What were they doing? What were they doing?
Amy Price. It shows Amy.
And then they show the Amy Price, they show the detectives.
Give me a break.
They play hard music against them. So at that point, the documentary wasn't reporting a story. They were advocating an angle. I thought that was egregious. They really took you on a wrong turn there. And that was weird. Then the police detective, when asked about the web sleuth, gives the most diplomatic answer ever. He's like, they're trying their best. He's not necessarily even mad at them. He's like, they're trying their best. They're trying to help. They're working with the evidence they have. So he's not even upset. And then he gives the most succinct timeline, which I wrote down, of the case. Elisa had been hospitalized in the past. She was having a psychotic episode. This is a plausible theory. The explanation of the dating error in the medical examiner's document, and then the explanation of the elevator footage. Everything lines up with these explanations, therefore making the police and stuff credible again. And then we get to the final piece of the puzzle, the state of the water tank lid. Because if it's closed on top of her, someone closed it on her. If it's open, she got into it herself. This is what we've been working on the entire documentary, essentially. And we go back to the hotel employee, Santiago Lopez, and he says, oh yeah, it was open. Oh, it was open. Okay, sounds good. So we get to sew up that as far as what actually happened when she was found.
This is just some sausage factory true crime documentary making right here.
We went a long way.
You got to crank out X amount of documentaries, Netflix. We get it. This one you had to make, but I know that they didn't think this one was good. There's no way that they thought that this would be the showstopper, because it's really not. And I haven't read reviews on it, but I can't imagine that this thing got positive reviews. It's so slow and meandering. And I think the director that made this one also made the Ted Bundy tapes. The Ted Bundy tapes were a little bit better than this. The Ted Bundy tapes had content, so they could focus on different episodes in a actually rich, meaningful way, because the Ted Bundy story is vast. He escapes from prison like 2 times. It's interesting. This case is not a Ted Bundy tapes level content grasp. So I think they should have made this a 1-episoder. They could have reduced all of the sleuths to maybe 6 minutes worth of talking time.
Just the English black chick. I'll listen to her all day.
They could have done a much better job of making this just as a narrative roller coaster as it was, but didn't have to string you along 4 episodes.
Definitely
not enough
strung
content.
us along.
It's just not enough content. So unfortunate. Bad documentary making.
It was as you would say, it was shot very fat.
One
Question
thing I did have, well, let me throw in one thing that did kind of spark my interest, and I would have loved if they went more into it, is the fact that there's no regulations during that time on keeping water tank doors locked. It almost makes you wonder.
That gets into the wrongful death case that the family brought up against the hotel.
What's to keep somebody from just pouring a bunch of rat poison in a water tank or something like that? It's a freaky concept that your water in a hotel up until 2013 or maybe a little bit longer didn't even have to be locked. Like there's just access to your water. How many bodies have been found in water tanks before Elisa Lam? Obviously it's a PR nightmare. I don't think she's the first person to be dead in a water tank. I think this has happened before and just nobody cared about it. And once this story got a bunch of publicity, I think all those regulations changed, and you had to have like a lock on the water tank and stuff like that, because it's almost too easy. It's so freaky and it's too easy. So that was a little moment where I was like, the wrongful death suit by the family. Let's bring in Amy Price trying to save her skin. There's no way she went through the fire alarm door. She had to have gone up the elevator. I thought that was a little interesting for me in that moment.
Yeah, it was an interesting case, and I was a little surprised that the judge dismissed it. I thought they might have had a case against the hotel for wrongful death or for negligence. I don't know the legalities of it, but they have to have fire exits, of course. The water tank didn't have a regulation for a lock at the time, therefore they didn't lock it. So the case was dismissed. But in this world where we have so many suings and legal stuff, I thought the judge would have
I feel like the issue on the table is there's no lack of evidence that she was having a breakdown. She even went out into the lobby and said, I know I'm crazy, but so is California, you know? And these things were documented, or at least verified by multiple people. So they all happened. And I think the family was suing because they felt that somebody should have called for mental health support for this person, because there was no shortage of evidence saying she was losing her mind. However, Amy Price says this hotel was filled with crazy people. She's not the first person to scream, I know I'm crazy, but so is California, in the lobby. So I can understand that from a business as usual perspective. I don't know how that's a legal argument in the slightest, but if you're working in that hotel, that story is number 400 on craziest stories that's happened at the Cecil. You know what I mean? So I don't think I would call 911 if someone did that. If anyone's ridden the bus for a year, they've seen crazier things on the bus. No one ever reports that. So I understand the judge's ruling, but my heart still goes out to all of the warning signs. Oh my God, of course, morbid. But all of the opportunities that this poor girl could have been helped to, easily could have saved her life.
Very sad.
Very, very easy, because it doesn't sound like she came from a family that abandoned her or was trying to get rid of her. If anything, they wanted her to do better. So this little trip was supposed to like bring her back to life, and was the cause of her death ultimately. So this is a real easy mental health fix too, if just somebody had gotten her the help she needed before this all happened, you know?
Yeah. The only thing I thought could have brought this documentary around for me is, as we come to the end, if the makers of the documentary went back at the web sleuthers and forced them to apologize, or said like, hey, what about these facts now? Hey, how about take off those glasses? Ironically, Morbid has a great quote in this, and it is, we have to be more responsible for what we say and do. So all the web sleuthers that are just throwing out bombs, and now we have the answer to all these questions. What the fuck? How about I'm sorry, police officers?
Yes.
How about the hotel wasn't haunted? If they had held the web sleuthers' feet to the fire, I think I would have liked to see that. I think I would have liked to see them squirm a little bit, not hide behind the internet. So broader question, the internet, beacon of technology, or something to just ruin your day?
Oh, beacon of technology.
Still beacon of technology.
The internet is,
we have
beautiful.
iPhones.
Yeah, the internet rocks. It's helped so many different things in so many major ways. Unfortunately, it has also grown this little clinging fungus that is web sleuthers, or at least these kinds of web sleuthers. You know, the kind of web sleuthers who don't really care about finding right evidence, or don't really care about sticking to a narrative that actually makes sense. It's unfortunate. And again, I don't blame the sleuthers. This is America. You can go online and do whatever you want. You can be any type of person you want to be online. It's just unfortunate that the documentary chose to showcase these people, with the exception of John Lorden. I appreciated John Lorden. Everyone else, your pick, the British black woman, everyone else I could have done without. I found them almost cringy when I was listening to them. The way that you can hear them trying to make it a story as they're saying it was hard to listen to. So I could have done without him, but I still love the internet. The internet rocks and it does so much. It's just, this is a bad thing that they chose to highlight.
Keep the internet. To summarize or to wrap up, the hotel was sold to another group and it plans to renovate. Still, half of it is going to be low income housing and the other parts are going to be turned into luxury hotel rooms in the future. So the Cecil Hotel continues on. And then they wedged in at the end of the doc a broader kind of moral judgment of homelessness and mental illness. I thought there was a good story to be told there, but it was wedged in a little too much at this point, and we had all our answers we needed for the story itself. So finalizing winners of the documentary, who do you think?
Winners of this documentary? This is a hard one. It doesn't seem like there's any winners here. The one that I'll point to, I'm going to give it to Kenneth Gibbons.
Oh,
Kenneth Gibbons
he's
doesn't come in up. Because everyone is a little bit annoying to me in this documentary. Insofar as the people who are interviewed, I really don't like the police officers. Amy Price feels a little disingenuous when she's trying to defend the hotel. The medical examiner sucks. I don't like anyone in this documentary. John Lorden's okay, but even then, he's just the favorite of the worst. All of the sleuths are horrendous. The only one I like is Kenneth Gibbons, because all he's doing is talking about having a wacky time in the 80s. In a
doing a lot of drugs in the 80s.
He might not even have known that this was about Elisa Lam, to be honest. They might have just been like, we're making a documentary about the Cecil. Like, what do you want to say? And you know? So I loved how he had nothing to say about Elisa Lam. He
had nothing to do with this case. Absolutely nothing.
Who she was. There's a 90% chance he has no idea who she is. I bet they just wanted him to give a little, little vibe of the hotel during the 80s. And he's got a leather fedora on. He's speaking articulately. I loved Kenneth Gibbons. He's the winner here for me. I don't think he went unnoticed either. I think other people heard him too, and he'll get some calls. He deserves them. He's interesting as hell.
Part 2 of the documentary, Kenneth Gibbons.
Just an
evening. I went winners of the documentary, drone footage, great drone footage in this documentary. And then I struggled on this one. The Cecil Hotel is the winner of this documentary. Despite all the violence, all the drug use, all the crime, it's been sold 3 times over to different groups in hopes of being renovated every time. So somehow the Cecil Hotel keeps on chugging. Losers of the documentary, who do you got?
The police. The police look really bad in this documentary. The documentary doesn't shame them, and I'm glad that they don't, but the police look really incompetent here. They could have solved this. If you got some better detectives on this one, you check the water tank as part of your sweep of the roof. It's as simple as that. They try and blame Christopher Dorner. I don't know if you remember that part, but they say that they had 18 detectives on it, and then once the Christopher Dorner shooting started, they got reduced to 4 detectives. Well, guess what? It still just takes 1 detective to check a water tank. So I didn't like how they said, well, we went down from 18 to 4, so our whole search had to change, as if it's almost a police officer's dream, it seems like, if the answer is probably contained in the hotel. The hardest thing about a missing person is the fact that she could be, or he could be, anywhere in the city. But if this missing person is in a hotel where there's no evidence that they had left, and all of the video footage does not have her leaving, you've reduced your crime possibilities by 99.9999 to infinity percent. So I think the police come off the worst in this documentary, and I would be interested to know how this affected their careers. To be honest, this does not bode well for the LAPD to have a girl go missing for, how long was it? 3 weeks, maybe a little bit longer. And then to find her deteriorating in a water tank that isn't locked is a brutal black eye for the LAPD, especially high-ranking detectives.
That's good. That's a good loser.
They're the losers there. Yeah, I would say.
I have for my losers of the doc, downtown LA. Looks like a horrendous place to visit. I have Anybody with a Webcam, losers of the doc. And then in a sympathetic, Morbid. Poor Morbid is the loser of the documentary. He quit music. He's not making music. He had a nervous breakdown, and he stayed at a hotel a year prior to any of this even happening. So by proxy, Morbid is also the loser of this documentary.
I hope Morbid, as a result of this documentary, gets almost a love backlash. Where now that a lot of people have seen this documentary, and I really feel that more people were disgusted by the web sleuths when they watched it. I really do think people are typically reasonable, and I think my opinion can't be that unique here. There's a cringe value with those web sleuths, and there's a real charming, endearing quality to Morbid, where you can, how could you hate him? He's writing songs about decapitating girls in the forest and truly embracing it in the most cliched, dangerous, freaky way possible. So I loved Morbid, and I hope he gets back into music and gets his Facebook page back. And I honestly hope he writes a song called like Elisa Lamb or something like that. And it just like everybody supports Morbid for what he went through and how fucked up it was that they actually considered him a suspect in this case. It's really depressing. Makes me feel sad for Morbid, but at the same time, I will give the documentary at least the credit for getting the interview with him, showing him in a good light, showing his story, how he got through it. And then at the end of the documentary, they give a little shout out to mental health. They say, if you need any help with mental health, call this number. They do redeem themselves a little bit there, I thought. So that was a shining moment for the doc for me, and Morbid too. I'm glad that Morbid's doing all right.
Get well, Morbid. We're rooting for you. Kenneth Gibbons and Morbid, stay by your phones. We need a documentary with those two.
It's coming. It's coming.
Crime Scene, The Vanishing at the Cecil Hotel is on Netflix right now. People can go watch it, see what we're talking about. Andrew Ramirez, thank you for joining me. Next month, we have plans for more true crime talk. So everybody stay pumped up. Take us out with your best pronunciation of the Cecil Hotel by Morbid.
Oh, man. You're going to put me on the spot to do a fucking
do a Morbid impression.
Mexican accent right now. He doesn't even, I don't know, man. He doesn't say it. I don't want to do it. You do it.
He pronounces it, I'm staying at the Cecil Hotel.
Nice one. All righty.
Thanks, man.
All right. Good stuff.
That is the episode for this week, everybody. The true crime installment for the month, The Vanishing at the Cecil Hotel. We did it. We went through the whole crime. How do you feel? How do I feel? How does everyone feel? Well, I feel like we took in a lot. The documentary took in a lot. What would I give this documentary? If this was a baseball at bat, I say it flied out to center. Got good contact, a lot of distance on it, but ultimately it was caught about 10 feet before the warning track. Solid swing though, let's give it that. Well, go watch it. Watch it again, or if you haven't already. I think you'll find it interesting. We sure did. So, thank you for listening, everybody. Thank you for watching too. Next week, another show in the works, and stay tuned for our next true crime installment next month. We got plans. You're going to hear about them. It's going to be great. Thank you, everybody. See you next time.